Ladies and gentlemen, it's now 7 minutes past 8 o'clock, so I'm back. So please allow me introduce today's host, the President of Korea Foundation, Ambassador Im Sung-jun. Ambassador Im Sung-jun will give us warm welcoming remarks. Ambassador Im, please. So please join me welcoming Ambassador Im. And thank you.
안녕하십니까. 국제교류재단의 임성준입니다. 오늘 바쁘신 이 아침 시간에 저희 국제교류 재단의 그 포럼에 이렇게 참석하신 데 대해서 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. Good morning, the Honorable Newt Gingrich, the Honorable Chairman Park Jin, of the Committee of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Unification of the Korean National Assembly. We have quite a few members from the Korean National Assembly. We have the Honorable Lee Kyung-jae, Moon Guk-hyun, Song Young-gil. It is a great honor for all of us to have this opportunity today to hear from a very special guest, the former Speaker of the House of Representatives of the United States, Dr. Newt Gingrich. Well, I had the pleasure of serving in the Korean Embassy in Washington, D.C., and I worked as a congressional counselor, so I am one of those who realizes the importance of the United States Congress and how powerful Mr. Gingrich was. As you well know, Speaker Gingrich is the author of the famous Contract with America that helped the U.S. Republican Party to victory at the House of Representatives elections in 1994 by taking majority for the first time in 40 years. It marked an epoch in the history of the U.S. politics and has been called the Gingrich Revolution by many people. Thus, Speaker Gingrich is remembered as a very active and influential member of the U.S. Congress. During his tenure as the Speaker, the United States Congress passed many laws on welfare reform, the first tax cut in 16 years in the United States, a balanced budget amendment, and the list may go on and on. But these accomplishments as a member of the House is not the only things to tell who Speaker Gingrich is and has done. He is known for so many creative ideas in helping to build a better society and his drive and energy for action. He is an author of various books and an extremely popular public speaker. Also, he launched the Center for Health Transformation and serves as the General Chairman of American Solutions for Winning the Future. And he is a news and political analyst for Fox TV channel. Through these activities, he continues to speak out on various social issues such as health, economy, energy, education, science, and seek for changes for a better future. Speaker Gingrich also has an excellent insight on military issues and international and security affairs. He serves as a member of the Defense Policy Board and distinguished visiting scholar and professor at the National Defense University. And Speaker Gingrich is an advisory board member of the American Foreign Policy Council. On this visit to Korea, he is accompanied by many principal figures and specialists of American Foreign Policy Council. I welcome them. Korea and the United States have maintained a close alliance since the beginning of the Republic. Over the years, the Korea-US alliance has been strengthened to our mutual benefits on various issues. Today, we are facing together a difficult challenge from North Korea, including nuclear threats, and I believe this critical time provides an important juncture for our two countries, not simply to reaffirm, but also proactively redesign our robust relations. It is a rare opportunity to listen to Speaker Newt Gingrich, for his insights and vision for the Korea-U.S. alliance in this crucial time. I hope that this visit to Korea of the Speaker Gingrich will be an important opportunity for us to discuss strategies and methods of working together to resolve this challenge and to continue to build the close alliance between our two countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Im Sung-jun. Now, I have to say that we have today here one of the most decent and one of the most eloquent speakers in our country, who is Dr. Park Jin, the chairman of the Committee on Unification, Foreign Affairs, and Trade. Please welcome Dr. Park Jin, Congressman Park Jin, with big hand. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the nice introduction. I'm very honored to welcome Speaker Gingrich to Korea. I first met the Speaker in 1995 when the former President Kim Young-sam visited Washington, D.C. to deliver a speech in the joint U.S. Congress. And then in spring 97, the Speaker visited Korea, first time as Speaker, to visit the Blue House, and we had a chance to meet again then. And I understand that this is a second visit to Korea in 12 years of time, and I think that that 12-year period has provided a lot of changes to Korea, to the Korea-U.S. relationship, and to domestic politics in this country. So I hope that Speaker Gingrich and his delegation from the American Foreign Policy Council can enjoy your visit to Korea at a very dynamic time and to learn about the country and contribute to the promotion of Korea-U.S. relationship. I understand that with the beginning of the Obama administration in the United States, the country is faced with the financial crisis and domestic reform, including the Medicare and the health reform, and the reconstruction of foreign relations in the global village. And I hope that Speaker Gingrich can give us a new, insightful perspective on the current issues and the future challenges facing America, and also on Korea-U.S. relationship as well. We are now troubled by North Korea in terms of its nuclear ambition, to try to persuade the North to change its course of action from a dangerous course to more positive and opening of the country. So that's a common issue that Korea and the United States should continue to make efforts to solve the problem. Between the two countries, we have the free trade agreement bill, which is still pending in both Congress. On the Korean side, we had a committee deliberations on the FTA, and we're waiting for the U.S. Congress to make progress on this issue. So I understand that Speaker Gingrich can give us a good advice on how we can finalize the free trade agreement between the two countries, given the fact that the Speaker was an active supporter of the NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, and also U.S.-Australian Free Trade Pact as well. And then we have global issues, the Middle East, cooperation between Korea and the United States and other parts of the world. So I think this is a very opportune time for us to invite the former Speaker Newt Gingrich, who has revolutionized the American politics with his ideas, his initiatives, his comments, and ideas into the American parliamentary process. And I also understand that Speaker Gingrich has introduced the importance of the C-SPAN, the congressional televised program, into the daily life of the American public. We now have the similar 국회 방송, the assembly television broadcasting, which is getting more popular. So I see some similarities in the transformation of democratic politics in both countries. I'm very honored to invite the Speaker Gingrich together with Ambassador Im Sung-jun to Korea. And we hope you can enjoy the program and get to know each other very well. Thank you very much. Welcome to Korea.
Thank you very much, Congressman Chairman Park Jin. Well, actually, without Chairman Park Jin, we probably could not have had this precious opportunity to have the Honorable Newt Gingrich today. So the Korea Foundation thanks again for the effort, to the valuable effort. Thank you very much. Now, that I'm so much honored to introduce today's speaker, the Honorable former Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, the Honorable Newt Gingrich. Please welcome, join me in welcoming with big hand, Mr. Gingrich.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming out to this early breakfast, particularly during this time of national mourning. I want to thank the Korea Foundation for giving us this opportunity. I want to thank Herman Perchner and his entire team at the American Foreign Policy Council, who have done a great job of arranging this. Little did I realize when we originally agreed to come here this week that we would be approaching the capital of world golf. And I can assure you, as we were coming across the Pacific, the pilot was bringing us the score about every 4 holes. And I realized at the end of that time that we were going to be entering a country very proud of the new PGA champion. So I'm delighted to be here. My ties to Korea actually go back to 1953, when my father was serving in the U.S. Army in Korea. And I remember when he came back home, he spent 27 years in the Army. When he came back home, he brought a small wooden peasant and a water buffalo. And it was a symbol of the Korea of 1953. Were he to visit Seoul today, he would be astonished at the scale of achievement of the Korean people. As you know, as late as 1960, the average income in Korea was $100, and you matched Ghana and Kenya in per capita GDP. It is one of the great achievements, and it's interesting to me how few academics there are around the world who want to study success. There are many academics who love studying failure, and they then prescribe a bigger government program to subsidize even more failure. But there are remarkably few people who study success. And yet South Korea is one of the great human achievements of the last 50 years, and all of you can be very proud of it. It actually creates one of the challenges of our generation, because when you have a country whose per capita income is 10 times that of your northern neighbor, a country which with twice the population has therefore 20 times the gross national product of your northern neighbor. And when your work, creativity, and flexibility are leading you to grow faster than your northern neighbor, so the gap is actually widening, it helps explain why the dictatorship turned to nuclear weapons as its only possible device for getting people's attention, because it is rapidly in every other way becoming less and less relevant. And that's part of the great crisis, I think, that we face over the next 20 or 30 years, that you have a fossilized dictatorship incapable of modernizing without risking the very collapse of the dictatorship, next to a center of world prosperity and productivity, which is likely to become even wealthier and even more successful. And that makes it even more important for us together to work on these things. Let me also say that I am honored to be here during the time of national mourning. Kim Dae-jung actually, as president and before that in his entire active political life, was an extraordinarily courageous advocate of democracy, He was an extraordinarily courageous advocate of trying to reach out. And while we may have disagreed at times over the details, the size of his heart and the amount of his courage was a genuine historic achievement. And I think that he is legitimately being recognized by his people as somebody who was very big in many ways and who really did establish a standard of courage and a standard of democracy that's very important. Today I'm going to focus on three things. I'm going to focus first on three very large challenges to all of our countries, second on the free trade agreement, and third on dealing with North Korea. Let me set the stage for this by saying that I think there are three very large facts that all of us have to deal with in the modern world. The first is that there is going to be an explosion of new science. The second is that China and India are going to become very successful competitors on a very large scale. And the third is that there are catastrophic weapons being developed that threaten civilization as we know it. And I think each of those poses a challenge to every industrialized democracy, including the United States. Let me say first that our expectation is that there will be 4 to 7 times as much new science in the next 25 years as there was in the last 25 years. That amount of new science, that's simple reason. There are more scientists alive than in all of previous human history. They are connected by cell phone and email, so they spread ideas and knowledge very fast. They have better computers and better lab instruments every day. They are connected to the marketplace by licensing, venture capital, and royalties. And the result is you're going to see wave after wave of new technology, new capability in energy, in materials technology, in biology, in health, in national security. Over and over, there will be new waves of knowledge. Nobody actually knows how you deal with that. 65% of the new knowledge will come outside the United States. And so we're faced with a great challenge of learning to look at the entire world in order to find all of the new breakthroughs. But that will be the first thing that defines the next quarter century. The second thing that will define it is the rise of China and India, which will in part be accelerated by the new knowledge. There are about 1,300,000,000 Chinese, and there are about 1 billion Indians, although the population pattern is such that India will probably pass China in total population. They have every right to work very hard. They have every right to compete very effectively. The challenge for the rest of us is to decide how are we going to respond to the legitimate competitiveness in a world market of hardworking, smart people on a grand scale. There I would recommend to you a very interesting movie called 2 Million Minutes, a documentary done by an American health entrepreneur who hires people in both China and India. 2 Million Minutes is 4 years of high school. And he takes 2 Indian high school students, 2 American high school students, and 2 Chinese high school students. And at the end of the movie, you realize that America is a country which is preparing for the 1956 Olympics, and that we are totally out of sequence with what it will take to compete in 2012. Now, this is less true of Korea. You have better schools than we do. You have parents who are much more dedicated to learning, and you have a greater willingness to insist that your students study and learn. But it's a very sobering movie, and it gives you a sense of scale about how big the changes will have to be. The third challenge we face, in addition to absorbing massive amounts of knowledge and learning to compete with China and India in a world market, is the rise of catastrophic weapons. All of us are aware of nuclear weapons. Very few of us look at electromagnetic pulse, which is a particular kind of very, very dangerous nuclear weapon. We also have to confront biological weapons, potential cyber warfare, nanoscale science, and robotics. Each of these areas has the potential to provide a devastating capability to whoever makes the right breakthroughs, and each requires very complex responses. And I think that we have to recognize that the price of civilization may be accepting the reality of these threats and learning how to build both national security and homeland security that is robust enough that if something bad happens, the civilization survives and moves forward. But I believe it's going to require, in effect, an insurance premium being paid by every civilized country into a much more robust national security and a much more robust homeland security, because you can't guarantee that something like this won't happen. Now, those three bigs, scientific knowledge, China and India as competitors, and catastrophic weapons, require a very significant domestic response. Every industrial country will have to move to a new level of creativity and productivity over the next 25 years. Now, you've been through several waves of that since 1953, and you've seen each cycle of productivity replaced by a new cycle of productivity, and you've gone from being a regional player to being a world player in terms of your corporations and your industrial achievement. And so imagine that you now have to do that again every 10 or 12 years for the foreseeable future. I think that's the inevitable world we're going to live in if we intend to be at the cutting edge of productivity and creativity and be able to therefore have very high standards of living in a competitive world market. For the United States, this is a very sobering moment. I do want to say we're actually not a particularly poor country. There's a great deal of talk about how great this crisis is, and it's the worst crisis since the Great Depression. I would point out first that the Great Depression was the immediate forerunner to the Second World War. And in the Second World War, we increased our domestic economy. In 3 years, we virtually doubled it. So our capacity to respond is enormous. We are still, by a big margin, the wealthiest country in the world. We may be self-indulgent and at times foolish, but we're very big. And I think that if we are prepared at any time to shift resources, we have more than enough resources to be capable of meeting any immediate challenge. We're currently spending a smaller share of our gross domestic product on national security than at any time since Pearl Harbor. And so if we simply went back to the Eisenhower level or the John F. Kennedy level or the Reagan level of shifting gross domestic product into national security, we could double or triple the size of our current commitment. And I think if we had to, we would do that. I think we're still we're very deeply committed to national security as a country, both among liberals and conservatives, which is why you see President Obama looking very seriously at strengthening our role in Pakistan and strengthening our role in Afghanistan. He is not withdrawing from the world. He has different views than President George W. Bush, but they're views about engagement. They're not views about isolation. I think in that context, the United States has to fundamentally, in order to be competitive 20 years or 25 years from now, we have to reform litigation, regulation, taxation, education, health, energy, and infrastructure. As you can imagine, that is a huge process of change. We've done it 8 times in American history. We now are going to have the 9th wave of fundamental change. I suspect we will do it, but I think it's going to be a very complex and conflict-ridden process because many interest groups enjoy the past and would like to defend the past and make a living out of the past, and they're not very excited about the government deciding to change their world. But I do suspect that over the next 20 years, you will see the United States modernize on a scale we have not seen since World War II. In that context, I think the free trade agreement is very important to the United States. I think it is psychologically important, and I think it is economically important. It is psychologically important because Americans have to be committed to competing in a larger and larger world market. There is no way to hide without your industries becoming inefficient and slowing down the rate of innovation. And so I very strongly favor the free trade agreement. I think the decision's entirely up to President Obama and his administration. He will be under considerable pressure from the labor unions and the left to reopen negotiation. His decision will obviously be final on that topic. And he would then, if he decided not to reopen it, have to spend a fair amount of energy getting it through the Congress. On the other hand, in this economy at the present time, this is the kind of free trade agreement that I think is very helpful in getting us back into innovation and back into, in both countries, being more productive and more capable of competing in the world market. So I'm very strongly in favor of passing the free trade agreement. Finally, let me talk briefly about security issues so we can get to questions. North Korea is a threat to everyone. This is a sad fact. North Korea is not just a threat to South Korea. It's not just a threat to Japan. As the Israelis discovered a year ago in Syria, North Korea is a threat around the world because the dictatorship will export weapons and export technology. There was film on North Korean television several years ago of an Iranian delegation with Kim Jong-il touring the missile site and the missile factory. And there's some reason to believe that many of the missile launches are sort of marketing programs in which the dictatorship hopes to convince other countries to buy things because they have virtually nothing that they can sell for hard currency. I regard, and as Koreans, you must have an even deeper emotion than I do about this. I regard the dictatorship as one of the great tragedies on the planet. Here is a dictatorship so incapable of change, so incapable of productivity, that it has shrunk the height of the average North Korean through malnutrition. It has hundreds of thousands of people in concentration camps. Millions have died from starvation. And yet, and you may well understand this vastly better than I do, coming from a different culture, but this is not just a narrow, my sense is, this is not just a narrow family dictatorship. There is a regime with an ideology and a belief system of enormous tenacity that has been in charge of North Korea now for 64 years. And there's no significant evidence of any large level of crisis inside the regime. I mean, there may be enormous dissatisfaction in the concentration camps, and the average North Korean might be unhappy. But my sense from the very small number of defectors I've read about, and the one or two I've met, is that they live in a totally different world, that they're so isolated that they think what they live in is normal. And I think that's very important for Americans in particular to understand, because it means we're dealing with a regime, not with an individual dictator, and it means we've got to think about the possibility this regime could last 50 more years. I mean, there's no objective evidence. I'm a historian by background. There's no objective evidence that dictatorships go away. They just sit there and decay. And so the challenge then becomes, how do we deal with that? Particularly in a setting where, even without nuclear weapons, Seoul is within reach of artillery and short-range missiles. And the opening 3 or 4 hours of a sudden spasm assault would be so horrendous that no rational person could want to risk that. And so we have this one of the most difficult challenges in the whole planet is 35 or 40 miles north of here. And we need to understand this is going to remain very hard. I also think we have to recognize that they have been investing in nuclear weapons for a generation. So they have an entire cadre, not just Kim Jong-il, they have an entire cadre of people who have spent a lifetime committed to this project and taking very scarce resources and pouring them into this project. So when we ask them to give these up, they have a huge disinterest in doing so and enormous internal pressure against doing so. And I'm just suggesting this is a much harder problem than people sometimes talk about. And we have this sort of conversation about, will the six-party talks work, and what can we do to either squeeze them or bribe them? This is a very fundamental problem, and it's not obvious to me that there's a solution. And this may be the sort of problem you have to endure for a very long time. Let me also say that while the six-party talks are useful, I think the objective reality is that China has no interest in significantly squeezing North Korea, that they have consistently subsidized North Korea. I think last year to the tune of over $1 billion. And I can't imagine, unless we're prepared to make this one of the 2 or 3 highest value parts of our relationship with China, I can't imagine how we begin to get their attention. Because they have their own vested interest in sustaining North Korea, partially because they prefer a divided peninsula, partially because they like something which annoys Japan, and partially because they like keeping our attention focused in Pyongyang rather than having us think about Beijing. And so I think that there's a very limited interest in China in being serious about the six-party talks, despite many conversations I've had over the years with Chinese officials who explain to me that I don't fully understand because they're really sincere in many, many ways that I have not yet penetrated, and I should really appreciate how much their subsidy is designed to actually bring pressure to bear. That says to me that the United States, South Korea, and Japan have a huge collective interest in thinking through how we minimize the risk of war and how we minimize the risk of Pyongyang simply making a mistake. The greatest danger, I believe, is not that Kim Jong-il or his son or whoever his ultimate successor is will do something irrational. The great danger is they will do something totally rational in their world as they see it, but they'll have the wrong information. And I think it's a very difficult challenge. Missile defenses are important, and I'm very much committed to missile defense, but they're not enough. Remember, nuclear weapons can arrive by ship, nuclear weapons can arrive by truck, nuclear weapons can arrive by cruise missile, nuclear weapons can arrive by small airplane. I mean, there are many, if your opponent is serious, there are many ways to hurt you. And I think we need a very comprehensive rethinking of how we're going to contain North Korea in the expectation that it will not change for 20 or more years, and therefore we have to contain it, minimize its ability to export weapons and to export technology, and make it relatively weak in its capacity to beyond its own border while not expecting in the short run any great change. And the only reason I reluctantly say this is I think the danger of triggering a last act of survival by getting them to decide to attack Seoul as the only thing they see left is very real. And I think it's, although I'm a risk taker and I'm normally a very aggressive conservative, this is one of the places in the world where I think being very cautious is very smart, because with every passing decade, the gap between the Republic of Korea and the dictatorship will get wider, your relative wealth will get greater, and the attractiveness to younger North Koreans will grow greater. And I think we have to hope that at some point the regime cracks, because I don't think we have the capacity to break the regime at any risk that is reasonable, given what they might do in a last spasm of trying to survive. Let me just say, in closing, and I feel this personally because, as I said, my father came here in 1953. From June 25th, 1950, we will, next summer, have spent 60 years guaranteeing the Republic of Korea. We lost a substantial number of young Americans, and we did for the right reason. But we didn't do it alone. From the very beginning, there were Koreans attached to the U.S. Army. From the very beginning, there were Korean units that fought with great courage. From the very beginning, we worked together. And it was our joint effort which first re-liberated the South and then has defended the region. Today, you carry a much bigger share of the burden than anyone would have thought possible 50 years ago. And because you have, in fact, stepped up and you have made the investments and you have developed the military capability, I think that you are relatively safe in a world where you can't guarantee anyone's 100% safety. I think it's fair to say that whether you're Democrat or Republican, whether you're liberal or conservative, the continued commitment of the United States to be the partner of South Korea in protecting democracy and protecting freedom and protecting safety is very, very deep and will continue, I believe, for as long as needed until the North finally changes and the people of the North are finally liberated to have lives of decency and dignity and freedom and prosperity. And I'm honored to be here and to have this chance to share ideas, and I look forward to taking questions.